New Jersey cops decided to mock a man as they beat him and violated him. Very sad story. Put it up full mass. This story is going to make your blood boil. New Jersey cops allegedly mocked a black man as he was recovering from brain surgery. Yep, brain surgery. But it didn't end there. According to the recently filed lawsuit, they decided to squeeze his scrotum and beat him during the arrest. You're looking at him. Federal judge ruled last month that a lawsuit filed by a black male in Paterson, New Jersey, alleging that police officers illegally searched, they illegally beat, and illegally sexually assaulted him in 2022 can in fact proceed. U.S. District Judge Jamel K. Semper ruled on September 22nd that some of the claims of Benjamin Jackson have legal merit, while dismissing others. In his lawsuit filed in November 2024 and obtained by Atlanta Black Star, Jackson, 35, alleges that 4 undercover cops in plain clothes stopped him without reasonable suspicion around 8 p.m. on November 6, 2022, as he stepped out of an SUV wearing a black fanny pack. In the moments leading up to the arrest, one of the officers, Muhammad Dumbasi, saw Jackson notice their unmarked vehicle, become startled, and widen his eyes while he abruptly slowed down his pace, the lawsuit says. He also reported that he saw Jackson touch his fanny pack in a way that armed individuals concealing a weapon often do. The officers, quote, wrongfully used these pretextual and alleged behaviors as justification to stop and frisk Jackson, who protested and declined their search, repeatedly asking them to call the supervisor, the complaint contends. Okay? So you have a pretext that is now part of the record. The pretext is, well, it looked like you may have had a gun based on the way you adjusted this particular item on your person. So that becomes the pretext to a frisk. All right? You're already starting on the bad foot here, the police. Now, the officer said they were going to frisk him anyway. Jackson was facing a building and had his arms up on a glass window, the lawsuit says, while officers confusingly told him if he didn't put his hands up, he would be arrested. Activity and commands, the lawsuit says, were captured on police body cam video. So Jackson then told 4 of the officers that he had stitches in his head from a recent brain surgery and that he suffers from seizures. The body cam video allegedly shows, despite this warning and his ongoing compliance, Officer Wisam Salome violently threw Jackson to the ground, then kicked him, punched him in the face, chest, and stomach, and slammed his face into the ground, the complaint says, aggravating his brain surgery wound. Then the cop cuffed him and removed the fanny pack. Okay, so now, in my opinion, you have crossed a questionable frisk to an illegal assault. You are now in illegal assault territory. All of the officers did not engage in this manner at that time. It was just one. There's more. As he was about to walk away with Jackson's bag, the cop allegedly turned around, forcefully grabbed Jackson's scrotum, then said, quote, "That's for free, bro. Don't even worry about it," end quote. During this sexual assault, none of the other officers intervened to protect Jackson, who was handcuffed, the lawsuit claims. Instead, they looked on and laughed. Before I continue, this is now getting into gang-like behavior, right? It's not that bad cops do bad things. We expect that. That happens in every profession. There are people that are not worthy to wear that badge. We know that. But the individuals who are there watching it, sometimes they believe that they're better than the guy doing it because they're not engaged in violating a citizen in such a way. But the truth is, you are the protector of the corrupt culture. You are the gatekeepers. You're the ones who will allow the culture to continue to corrupt not only the agency known as policing, but communities that are policed by them. So you're no better. And without an enforcement for the duty to respond clause, you have a responsibility to say something. If you don't have a penalty for not saying anything, it doesn't matter that somebody says you should have said something. There's more. So the police report on Jackson's arrest said Jackson actually obstructed officers from checking his fanny pack. So that's their actual complaint against him, which was found to contain a handgun loaded with 5 bullets, reported northjersey.com. Despite his complaints of severe and painful injuries, Jackson was walked to and seated in the police car for multiple minutes as the cops berated him, the lawsuit says. Then, just after the police car left the arrest scene, a reportedly high crime area of Paterson, Jackson had a seizure, which Officer Melik Asaf, who was driving, initially believed Jackson was deliberately banging his head around in the back seat, but then agreed to pull over and call an ambulance. When emergency medics arrived, Jackson told them he had just had a seizure and that one of the officers grabbed his testicles, which still hurt. The officers stood by mocking and laughing at his injuries, remarking they, quote, did not see him foaming at the mouth, end quote, and therefore doubted he had a seizure, the complaint says. So he was taken to the hospital. But isn't it interesting that cops will routinely say, well, we're not trained for that. We're not here for that. We're not trained to do that. But then qualify themselves to be medical doctors, to be psychiatrists, to be psychologists when it fits their narrative, rather than simply doing what the protocol says to do. If somebody says that they're hurt, you need to call an ambulance or take them to the hospital. That's what your protocol says. You're not a medic. You are not a doctor. You're not a nurse. You're not qualified to make a medical decision. If somebody says they're hurting, you take them to the hospital, period. There's more. So Jackson was taken to the nearby hospital where he was treated for the pain in his scrotum and given medication for his seizures. The lawsuit says he was later diagnosed with an injury to his left testicle that required surgical treatment and was told that the severity of the injury could cause infertility. Yeah, that was a heck of a grab, wasn't it? Jackson was later convicted of unlawful possession of a handgun related to the November 6, 2022 incident. NorthJersey.com reported he was sentenced in February to a maximum of 42 months in prison, which happened. He was incarcerated at Bayside State Prison in New Jersey until May 8th. He was then paroled on May 8th. His amended federal civil rights lawsuit charged the city of Paterson, its police department, and 12 officers with 13 counts in violation of state and federal law, including unlawful search and seizure, false imprisonment, excessive force, assault and battery, denial of medical care, and an equal protection violation alleging that he was beaten and mistreated by the officers due to his race. Let's put it up full mass. Atlanta Black Star reported that Judge Semper ruled that Jackson's claim of excessive force and assault and battery against 4 officers who were plausibly and specifically identified in the complaint as having physically abused him, officers Salome Dumbasi, John Rickowich, and Corey Davis, can actually move forward. However, he dismissed the counts after of the 8 other officers included. So those are the ones that will have to stand charged for this, for civil court. Now, this is for some a mixed bag because you have an individual who actually did have a handgun. He faced a jury of his peers about that charge, was found guilty and served his time. He has now moved on with life. But you also have multiple police officers, according to that allegation, who decided to engage in a significant disruption of this man's dignity and constitutional rights. Too many times, because you can find an underlying criminal element, too many times the police will get away with committing crimes against you. That is not how this is supposed to work. And in this story, you have a shining example of an individual who technically illegally possessed a firearm according to the conviction. But he also was a victim of multiple crimes in the process of being arrested or searched. That is a fact, too, according to the allegation. Now, in the suit, there is no proclamation that the evidence was planted. There is no proclamation that somehow they messed the charge up with the weapons charge. None. You see, it's interesting, isn't it? Put up the cops again. The person who said, okay, I will take the charge. I'll serve my time. I will admit this is what it is. All right. No issue. Moved on with life. But the cops, you think they're going to be as noble? You think they're going to be as forthcoming, willing to accept their penalty for what they've done to him? The trust that they violated while having that badge? Hell no. They wouldn't think of it. All right, dear brother, thoughts here.
I mean, yeah, I think that the principle here is that multiple things can be true at the same time.
Correct.
And clearly, this gentleman had the possession of a firearm that was illegal. And as you said, was convicted for it, served time for it. That is completely a different world from the rest of the events that took place. I think that if you're seeing someone reach for a fanny pack, it can be for multiple reasons. But one of them can be because he recognizes that they're in unmarked cars, knows he has an illegally held firearm and is trying to get rid of it and not try to cause more violence, but they will use whatever version of events in their minds to justify their actions. So I think what he underwent is disgusting. And I also think there is kind of like a symbolic element to it. I mean, they pulverized this person and they potentially made it so that he won't be able to ever have kids again. That's not justice. That is, I think, some sort of very sick vengeance, I think. And hopefully these cops will have some kind of justice, but of course, not optimistic about it.
Yeah, and no matter what, here's what's guaranteed. The city will be defunded either by the settlement, the adjudication, or simply because you have to pay the attorneys to defend these cops in the court of law. We'll bring you updates as updates develop.